DSCR Appraisals. What's going on, everybody? Jeff Trevarthen, Jeff the Mortgage Pro. Thanks so much for watching the video here today. Today we're looking at DSCR loan appraisals. I've been doing a lot of DSCR loans thanks to viewers like you who keep watching and keep liking my videos and keep reaching out to me and talking to me about your investment property purchases with the DSCR loan. I thought a question that comes up a lot is like, what does the appraisal process look like for DSCR loans? So I thought, why not do a video about it, and let's go into it here a little bit. So DSCR loans always have appraisals, just like just about every other mortgage transaction that you're ever going to do is going to have an appraisal required. Some conventional loans, when you're doing refinances or even purchases, if you have a good equity position and that property's, in the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac database, and that, there was a transaction over the last couple of years, they have what's called an appraisal waiver, which means that we already kind of know what the value is. But DSCR loans, they don't have that type of a function or a feature. We always are going to need an appraisal with a DSCR loan. So that's why we need them going forward, because we need to determine what the market value of the property is that you're buying. So 9 times out of 10, I'll probably even say 9.5 times out of 10, the appraised value comes back at the purchase price or the value that we need. And so, we just still need to do that just in case. The cost of a DSCR loan appraisal is anywhere from, let's say, $500 to $1,000. Higher loan amounts, anything over $1 million is probably going to need 2 appraisals. So something to keep in mind. But those the range of appraisal costs can, vary depending on the complexity of the appraisal. So if you have a rural property or multifamily property, those things are going to vary, and that's going to affect the cost. They are done exactly the same way that any other residential real estate transaction is going to do an appraisal. So there's 2 different ways that I've seen in terms of calculating what the income is of a property. So, what the value is of a property. So one of them is going to use what's called the sales comparison approach, and the other one is going to use the income approach. So the income approach is typically used on commercial properties, multifamily stuff, 5 or more units going forward. Although I do have some DSCR programs that will use the sales comparison approach. For the most part, most commercial property is going to use the income approach going forward. And what they're going to do with that is they're going to determine what the income is, the net operating income of the property. They're going to figure out what the cap rate is of that particular property, and that way they're going to be able to determine the value based on the income coming in. So with residential DSCR loans, this is not the case. We do not use the income approach. We're going to use what's called the sales comparison approach, which is what just the majority of residential real estate uses in determining what the value of the property is going forward. So the sales comparison approach is going to look at 4 to 8 comparable properties, usually within a mile radius. If they have to go a little bit further, they will, but we want to try to keep them within a mile radius. Similar bedroom and bathroom count, and usually we want them to be moving within the last 6 months. I've seen them go up to a year in behind, but markets change so much and so fast that it's hard to find comparable sales sometimes, especially if you're doing multi-unit properties, and there may not have been a lot of them in not a huge town. Appraisals can get really complex in that sense. So sales comparison approach is the one that we're going to use for the DSCR loan appraisals. And then one of the other things that we're going to need when we do a DSCR loan appraisal is we're going to need a rental survey, because that's how we determine what the market rent of the property is. So there's 2 different ones we can do. We can do a long-term rental survey. That's what is most common when you're doing a DSCR loan. A lot of people are buying long-term rentals with these. Sometimes they have people that are in there that are leasing a property, but maybe they're under market rent. So what the long-term rental survey does is the appraiser is going to do the same type of thing. They're going to use comparable rental history from comparable rental properties in the area, anywhere from 3 to 8 rental properties, and they're going to figure out what the market rent of that property is. That's on a long-term rental survey. And then the same thing happens for a short-term rental survey as well. They're going to look at anywhere from 3 to 8 short-term rentals in the area. They want to, again, have a close radius to where those properties are located at. They want them to have, be rented out within the last 6 months. So all that data is really important, because we want to try to get it as accurate as possible. The reason why the rental survey is so important is that's what they base the DSCR on. That debt service coverage ratio is based on the rental survey provided by the appraiser going forward, especially in a purchase transaction. So it's a very important number, and we really want the appraiser to, generate a good income for us to be able to get us a DSCR loan to make it make sense going forward. And sometimes it doesn't work. And what happens in that sense is that if you have a DSCR ratio under 1, you can still do the loan, but it's not going to be as favorable of terms because it's not as a good of an investment, as it would be if it was over 1 or even like 1.25 if you can get something like that. Okay. So definitely a key metric in doing this is the DSCR rental survey that's part of the appraisal process when the appraiser goes out there. All right, if you guys have any questions at all about DSCR appraisals, if there's any other questions that came up when I was chatting about these here for a few minutes, please make sure you reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you more about DSCR appraisals and how they fit into the process of doing a transaction with a DSCR loan. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'm going to put my calendar link down below. Let's schedule a call, and I will chat with you on the next show. Have a great day. Bye.